I've got my trusty Red Bull to make sure that I have verbal fluency. Because sometimes I don't. Unless I take torque. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're great. Hope you had a great weekend so far. Ready for the spring. I'm ready for the weather to stop being bipolar. That's what it's doing right now. Fucking ready for it, bro. Ready for it, man. Tired of the winter. I mean, you can't do shit. You know? I met a girl like three months ago or something, and it's just like dating in the winter. It's like, what the fuck, man? You're freezing cold. You have to wear jackets and prepare for it. You can't walk outside much. You have to get back to your car. Tired of it, man. Talk about testosterone changing people's lives as we filter some folks in here. Hope you guys are great. Happy weekend. Happy Saturday. Is it Saturday? I need a fucking calendar in front of my face at all times because I forget what day it is most days. Day before yesterday, I was driving to the gun range, and I did a video that I posted to Facebook. Facebook for me is like, an outlet for posting about personal development. So find me, Ryan Michael Ballo, on Facebook. That's really all I post about. Back in the day, I wanted to do a personal development channel. I still might at some point, but I post a lot of my thoughts on personal development there. And one of the videos just the other day was like, if you think you're a lazy piece of shit, you're probably not. Like if you can't get yourself to go to the gym or start a company or be a boss, it's probably not that you are lazy. It's probably that you feel like shit. Because if you woke up at 7 a.m. every day and felt like an animal, you would absolutely go to the gym. Yeah, you'd start a company. You'd work to make more money. You'd pursue the girl of your dreams. You'd pursue the house of your dreams. You'd be doing all the shit that you really do want to do deep down, but probably you just said, I guess it's not attainable right now, or I can't do it, or it's not in the cards. People make all these excuses. God says it's not in the cards. No, it's that you feel like shit. Yeah. And that, if said guys, the whole problem with the situation in the States is that you go to the doc, you test testosterone, and it's like 450, 500. And the guy goes, yeah, you're fine. It's not a test. Must be something else, bro. Must be something else where you're not like a killer and don't want to be super productive. Must be something else. And then you go down all these rabbit holes of trying whatever, nootropics, supplements, and maybe I need to eat the potato diet, whatever it ends up being. And it's all wrong. The moment then you discover if you inject 100 milligrams or 150 milligrams of testosterone once a week or split it up however you'd like, well, then suddenly you're fucking productive. You want to go to the gym, you feel great, and you have goals again. Testosterone, and specifically DHT, is the life force of a man. Without it, you are next to nothing. You are next to nothing, right? You're weak. You're weak-willed. People think willpower determines, how productive you're going to be in life. Not true. Willpower and mindset is like 15% of it. As much as we like to give credence to all these things, it's actually like 15% of it. Yeah. The other 85% of it is how fucking beast you feel. If you feel like a beast, you're going to be so much more productive, and you will target what you want. I hope that resonates with people. I really hope it does. And it seems to have resonated with the people that I shared it with. Ryan Michael Ballo on Facebook. Go find me. Friend me. Nosy Blacklight. Good morning. Yeah, music is the most on brand for Cortex Labs. Interesting. That's that song is one of the intros. There was a part of that song which was the intro for us for the longest time. If you listen to the whole thing, it's just an old artlist.com track that I got that was like a good intro for us. But thanks. Of course, I would say thanks to that, brother. All right, let's get into questions, boys. Steven, 25 milligrams in clomiphene daily. Ooh, sorry, brother. Actually, sorry. Maybe it's working for you. 750 IU HCG 3 times a week. 800 total T, 41 free, E2's 31. Still need to dial in libido. Cream makes T go up, but then FSH go down. What do you suggest is the next step? Next step would be to remove clomiphene. Yeah, your libido is probably suffering because you're blocking estrogen receptors, not just in the pituitary, but elsewhere, probably in your brain. And that will mute your libido, man. That's just the bottom fucking line, dude. This is exactly what happens to people when they take a Arimidex too much or any AI, even DHT derivatives, where it takes their estrogen too low or it blocks the receptor side of things, and you feel estrogen muted for a while. Not only will you have no libido, but it'll be impossible to come or climax, and you will be a lot less interested in sex, and most times guys will have dick problems with very, very low estrogen. So you could be at 31 all you want to, but if you're blocking the receptors via clomiphene, this kind of stuff is going to happen. Yeah, because those numbers look great. Those numbers are pretty good. At 800 total tests, I would expect someone, on tier T to be, if they're not using HCG, probably around 25. With HCG, maybe 35, 40 or so, and some of those guys will have to take AIs just a little bit to get it down to 25, and some won't. But these numbers look pretty good. Yeah, you shouldn't not have libido on this. So my suggestion would be to remove the clomiphene. I'm not sure who told you to get on that. That is a PCT drug. It is not a testosterone, it's not like a TRT analog at all. It is a PCT drug. It is what you take if you're trying to get off a steroid cycle and go back to natural, or whatever. The fact that you have HCG in there sort of nullifies all of this, because HCG will shut you down too. Yeah, from the hypothalamus pituitary perspective. So my suggestion would be to remove that clomiphene and up your HCG dose. If you don't want to go on tests, up the HCG dose, to well, you're at basically, more than 2,000 a week, but, up it to like 1,000 or 1,200 3 times a week. Yeah. Yeah. So that you can compensate for what will inevitably be a loss of T because you're removing a clomiphene. But in that case, you won't be blocking estrogen receptors and you probably get your libido back and feel a lot better. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, full-blown TRT with some HCG, dial in E2, and you'll be good to go. Said, recently got my blood work back, 1,500 free tests. All right. Love how that fucking feels, by the way. Free test 475. Yeah, that's about right. So you're 200 something over the range. That's beautiful. SHBG is 15, estradiol 29. Fucking great. Extremely fatigued, though, because I discovered I'm very hypothyroid. Okay, going on T2 soon. T3 maybe. Hoping I continue this bulk on it. Yeah, I mean, those are good numbers. My libido would be fucking crazy at that. I've gotten to that before. Anything below 29, though, like 20, and it goes away on higher tests. So the ratios do apply to an extent in those situations. But you got to get the thyroid medication squared away. Yeah. I got one client that we recently discovered has got like fucking low T4. It's actually deficient, and I hadn't seen those bloods. He hadn't showed them to me for a while. I've been working with them for a while. Like that's a critical next step. That's a critical thing that you must do. I was never deficient in T3, T4, and free versions of those hormones, but they were on the lower end. So when I started taking bovine desiccated thyroid supplements, it got them up. It mixed with, what is it, every other day? Every other day, 200 micrograms of selenium to convert more free T4 to T3. And yeah, big fucking difference. Big difference in everything, brother. So you've got to get that done. You've got to get that done. If you're fatigued and you are hypothyroid, that's your answer. That hormone gland and those hormones are pretty critical for your energy, your body temperature regulation, all that stuff. Red Bull break. Oh, yeah. I'll be getting the 12 ounces. I just don't drink caffeinated coffee in the morning, so a Red Bull is actually a lot better for me personally. Because, you get the fucking B vitamins and all this other stuff in here, taurine, I think. Matt Cap, can tea cream be used on the cheeks to grow facial hair? I mean, you could try it. You'd be much better off getting high potency DHT gel, which you could find on the source list, and rubbing it on the cheeks. I've never tried that before. I obviously don't need to try it, but maybe that would work for you. DHT does all kinds of weird shit regarding hair growth. When I use it consistently, hair sprouts up. I mean, I generally shave my chest to see the definition, like for chest workouts and shit. But hair will grow in places that I never previously had hair. Like even my fucking ears. So when I go like to get my hair cut, like, could you trim that big long hair that's popping out of my fucking ear? I don't want to look like I'm a 75-year-old dude. So yeah, you could try it, but DHT would be better for you. And it would probably help even if it was just systemic and not necessarily local. Farmer Rick with the $10 super chat. Thank you, brother. Have I ever had someone who was a low responder to test cream? No. My labs, if the dose is right, no. My labs came back 1150 total T, 48 E2. My cream is 15%. Labs were done, blah, 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 blah. Also on Testy, 140 per week. I'm not, well, so what's happening? How are you a low responder? What are your symptoms? You got to be clear about that, brother. Otherwise, I really can't help you. Yeah. Said 9 weeks on 200 milligrams test E weekly. Okay. Only AI is DIM plus calcium glucarate. Recently started T4, 125 micrograms a week. Levothyroxine for thyroid, which has only made symptoms worse, which is why I'm going on T2. Oh, okay. That's the explanation. Interesting. I mean, I consult with an endocrinologist about this, man. I'd have to look at that blood work and get some more context. Happy new moon. Oh, it's a new moon. Are you one of those, like, I'm in a melancholy mood today. Oh, it must mean fucking Venus is circulating Sagittarius. Like Jupiter's on its third ring. That's funny though. Yeah, man. Whatever it is, happy new moon to you, brother. I don't know the name of the actual song. I think it's called it might be called The Void. Yeah. It's called The Void by an artist called Stephen Keech, Keech. The Void. Yeah, you can find that on Artlist. All my tracks, people that ask me the names of the tracks, there are tracks that are on Artlist. Artlist is a way that you can pay a monthly fee and get copyright-free music or music that you're licensed to use. You plug in your YouTube channel so that it knows not to flag you as a copyright. And there's There's some very crappy music on there, but there's some gems in there as well. You got to hunt hard for them. Kind of annoys me a little bit that there's not more better. Like some of them are just like, dude, this sucks. Levi, just started test prop, 40 milligrams every other day. Okay, good dose. That would make me tired on day 2. On day 2, I'd be fucking dragging. I'd be dragging on day 2. Like later in the day, I'd be like that, breathing heavy. I'm tired. I want to vegetate. Every other day for me, 70 works good. Better yet, every day is kind of where I'm at with prop if I dose prop. All right, this is for PFS. It's been a life changer. My erections are back like crazy. Only issue is hair loss. I think I'm hypersensitive respond. Okay, fucking wonderful, wonderful. If I were you, I really wouldn't touch a thing because you found a solution to the dick problems. Listen, I was having this conversation with my girl last night, and it was like, it's because we talked about my work at some capacity, and it's like the conversation came or the topic came up like your dick or your hair. Yeah, man. Choose one. Plenty of guys can look good bald, dude. Or with less hair, get a crew cut. I'm sure it's not all going to go away. Thing about test prop is that, it increases free hormones and it gives you a real rapid surge of DHT. That DHT is real abrupt, and then it hits you at high concentrations. You could probably get away with dosing, kind of microdosing along ester so long as the dose is high and get resolution of this problem as well. And then, maybe adding little bits of exogenous DHT to it, where like you kind of have it on your hand on the dial where it's like more DHT would cause more hair loss, but the right amount is good for erections and all this sort of stuff. But, if you don't feel like going through all that, just stick with what you got and, don't worry about it all that much. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the names of these peptides, but there are some newer peptides. And it's not GHK copper. There's another peptide that's pretty good for hair loss that does not do anything to DHT. Anything that inhibits DHT at any level, you don't want to touch, man. But sometimes you gotta make a choice here. Sometimes you gotta, if it again, I have good hair genes, so whatever. But if I take a lot of Proviron, my hair will start to get nuked. I just don't need to take Proviron all the time. But some people gotta make a choice, man. Gotta make a choice. Dar Fitness liked the video about NoFap and prolactin. People make crazy claims about it. While there is validity, it comes down to prolactin. Blowing loads constantly makes you lazy because of it. Yeah, I mean, just the bottom line is prolactin. The funky thing about it is that the literature hasn't explored it all that much. The degree to which it's explored, you have to hunt really far to find. That it basically destroys vascular function in the base of the penis. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can fix it, but in the constant inhibition of the base of the penis in terms of blood flow, which prolactin fucking induces, it takes some time to reverse, and that'll just constantly happen. At the same time, as I said, you're inhibiting testosterone. That's just it. People will attribute it to dopamine and all these other things, and some people even said they've gotten blood work periodically through periods of a lot of masturbation. Well, did you test the blood work an hour or two after masturbation? Of course not. Of course not. Yeah, you'd see that your prolactin was either above range or close to above range. It's the exposure to PRL, even if it goes to 18, which is right there at the top of the range, but not necessarily over, that causes these problems. Right away when PRL shoots up, which it will inevitably after climax, the gonadotropes, these are cells that ultimately end up secreting the raw precursors to down the chain give you intratesticular testosterone, are inhibited. Gonadotrope cells are inhibited by the firing of prolactin from lactotrope cells. Yeah, that's just largely the cause of that. Now, this doesn't mean, however, that there's nothing to say about being a third-party viewer of two people having sex and that being how you train yourself to be turned on. You obviously don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. But a person with a very, very healthy hormonal system can watch porn and then also have sex and everything's fine. Yeah, I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just saying, you'll find that that's the case. Am I familiar with Kittner's pyrolutamide topical, which is supposedly a higher affinity than DHT receptors, not anti-androgenic? No, I'm not. Sounds interesting, though. Crypto Magic started test cream last week. Okay. Clinic has me on 50 milligrams per day. That's a little low. Surely this is a low. Right, yeah. Any thoughts? I've switched from test E. What clinic is this, by the way, that they would do that? Because most clinics worth their weight in salt are going to skip right to the 200 milligram per milliliter stuff and tell you at least 3 pumps a day. Or 2 and 2 is kind of the starting dose for that. But you never know. Some people are sensitive to estradiol and shit. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel and what's going on? I'll tell you what. No matter what, like if you can get away with a lower dose of any, testosterone, estrogen is going to be in a better place, which means your dick's going to work better and libido is generally going to be better. So long as, if you're one of those people that requires HCG for that stuff, that you have the right HCG dose. Yeah. Yes, brother. Yes. But, you're going to have to give that 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You'll know within the first 5 days, like how this cream is affecting you, but you generally want to give it time to start affecting the hormone receptors and all that shit to determine, its efficacy. Drew, why do you think it takes longer to finish? Climax? Went on TRT, went from a minute man to a marathon man? Well, hey, it's better to be not a fucking minute man, for sure. That's not going to fly with women. Secondly, though, the answer to that is just HCG. Yeah. Listen, TRT is not full hormone replacement. It's just testosterone replacement, which is largely anabolic, and then its conversion to DHT is the androgenic sexual function enhancing, and then some baseline of estradiol facilitates some of those processes. But without intratesticular function, when it's completely shut down, this stuff tends to happen, right? This stuff happens, and the mechanisms run amok. There's a lot of them. One of them I actually think is low intratesticular estradiol. Yep, that'll cause those sorts of problems. And, you need to find the HCG dose that doesn't take estrogen too high, but that prevents it from going too low where, you end up having problems like this. Alternatively, though, Proviron will probably help with that. In some cases, people raise their test dose and that helps with it, but usually it's DHEA and HCG that need to be added to the regimen, for sure. For sure. Like I can tell you for sure, like it's a fine balance. If I've got too much HCG in the regimen, erections are a little lackluster because of estrogen, but too little HCG and then climax is harder. The right amount of everything. And it's just like, it just kind of feels like normal, normal. That's how it's supposed to feel. And that's what you should strive for. Remember how normal sexual function felt before, before you were hypogonadal and then prompted you to get on TRT. That's what you should shoot for. That's what this channel is all about. Just giving people tools for that. Jay Gotch can't dial in on AIs. Dick goes flat no matter what the dose. 50 milligrams test prop of the 1500 CDG 2X daily is the best. Never looking back. Wonderful. This is not uncommon, by the way, boys. Yes. Listen, I can respond to AIs, but I got to be real careful about dosing them and do it methodically. Otherwise, shit like this will happen. But you're not alone. Some people, they just take AIs no matter what it is. Again, you might have to microdose with making a liquid solution of Arimidex and some alcohol, like some ethanol or some distilled water, and that would probably solve. You'll probably found the right dose and the right frequency. But some people, it's just like they're not going to be able to manage estrogen with an AI. But estrogen needs to drop. People have to understand that there's a big difference between inhibiting aromatase and then estrogen kind of just going down naturally. Yeah, in that state. Because there's different things happening in those states. If you take an AI, and I'm not anti-AI, but I just need people to know this. If you take an AI, you're doing two things. You're lowering estrogen, which is what you want, but you're also inhibiting aromatase. And aromatase is needed. It's needed in various places in the body, especially the brain, to convert testosterone in the brain, which modulates sexual function in the limbic system. So, if you're completely devoid of that process, libido is going to suffer. That's why, some people are just going to need to lower their dose down to 100 to 140 milligrams a week with just enough HCG so that estrogen goes down naturally. and they don't have problems like this because they just can't take AIs. Yeah, you're not alone on that. You know, some people just have problems with AIs. Venus Rose is an astrologer, but it's just a great day in general. Cheers and thanks for the great live stream. Awesome. Yeah, I'm for the record, I'm not a non-believer in that shit. I have many times went and read the Pisces monthly horoscope, and the Pisces monthly horoscope is, I mean, some of it I think, depending on the website, like they're trying to kind of over like excite you about some shit that is not real. Like, you're gonna stump. This will be a great financial month for you, whatever. But some of it was like remarkably accurate. And like shit would start happening that aligns with the monthly horoscope. And I'm like, I do this. That's what I do. Tufel. Good morning, sir. What is your current protocol? How are you feeling? I just switched to what the fuck am I at? I just switched to 105 milligrams every 3.5 days. Yeah, I've been on 300 milligrams for 6 weeks. Zero change in anabolism, zero change in whatever. I need to be at 500. I already proved that on my last cycle. So, you know, I ran 300, 150 every 3.5 days for 6.5 weeks. And quite honestly, the difference in anabolism was like, I mean, maybe 7 to 10%. It just wasn't worth it. You know, I'm like wasting testosterone. So I'm back on a TRT dose at this point. This just happened in the last week. And, yeah, I'm running 105 every 3.5 days. So it's 210 a week. It's just 200 milligrams a week, basically. Standard TRT dose, in my opinion. So we'll see how that, you know, ends up leveling out. I've been there before, and I'm sure it'll all be fine. You know, things take time to level out and whatever. But, you know, ran a sports TRT with just 300 milligrams. Yeah, it just wasn't doing it, you know. Now, am I interested in going back on an anabolic, you know, a really anabolic compound? Well, sure, but it's probably going to be Anavar at this point, you know. I don't necessarily know if I want to run 500 to test. It takes 3 weeks to a month to dial in libido. I mean, I've experienced them last time, so it should be quicker, but, you know, there's got to be aromasin in that for me. HCG dose changes, and sometimes I get tired of having to dial in, you know. So we'll see, but, you know, likely Anavar. I've got a lot of it, you know. I have a lot of it, and Sourceless gives you access to never-ending amounts of it. So, you know, at some point, I'm probably just going to run that. According to ChatGPT, Anavar is like 10 milligrams of Anavar is like 50 milligrams of tests, give or take, in terms of anabolism. All right, so each 10 milligrams you take of Anavar is like 50 fucking milligrams of test. If you run 20 a day of Anavar for a while, it's an extra 100 milligrams test. But I think it's more. And Anavar has different effects at the muscular level, at the tissue level, skeletal tissue level. Very, very powerful for anabolism. Prop is now out of stock at a popular Sourceless vendor. You made it quite popular. Yeah, people probably went and did it, but it's not out of stock everywhere on Sourceless. Yeah, it's just probably one of the vendors might have run out of it. Red Bull break. This shit's good. I recently tasted the strawberry Red Bull. Not a fucking fan, bro. Not a fan, dude. I'm not. Chris G, curious your updated thoughts on Kisspeptin. Yeah, I've been through this, but you probably haven't seen it. Kisspeptin needs to be dosed multiple times a day in order for the most efficacy to come about, and that's inconvenient. However, if you want to do it, you can do it. Kisspeptin interacts with pituitary lactotropes, which would raise prolactin. So you have to be a little bit careful with the use of Kisspeptin. It's not going to happen in everybody, but it happened to me when I was using it. However, while using it and not using HCG, while I did get testicular shrinkage, my erections and libido were fucking phenomenal. Like phenomenal. I mean, I'd have these 15-minute erections like out of nowhere. Like just working on my laptop in the morning, I'd get an erection and just sit there for 15 fucking minutes and be like, all right. You know, going into Dunkin' Donuts to get my coffee and be like, oh, here's this again. I have to figure this out before I go in there. So look, it's study for hypoactive sexual disorder in men and women. Kisspeptin, we're gonna in the years to come evolve upon our understanding of it, and hopefully there'll be because there's a lot of attention on it. If you search it on YouTube, you're going to find people in on the other across the puddle, the other side of the world, especially, are really talking about kisspeptin and focusing on it. So whatever next iteration, I don't think it's kisspeptin 10. You know, it should be kisspeptin 50, which is a lot more expensive. There should just be a different version of it that's better. Potentially has a longer half-life. They need to figure that out, and then that might be a wonderful replacement for HCG in time. Right now, look, in 20 years, we will have evolved upon all things regarding TRT to the point where things will just be better. You know, ancillaries will be better or more available, all that sort of shit. Levi, what nootropics would you recommend if you can't take modafinil? Teacrine, dynamine, theobromine, and low-dose racetams. Yep. Chris, also, after reconstituting kisspeptin, how long does the vial stay good for? Chat GPT says about 14 days. Chat's probably right about that. You know, I don't remember how long. But I want to say I used it for about a month, and it was the same vial, and it didn't have any change in effect. So something to think about. Bowtie, through coaching PFS clients, what has been the best protocol for PFS people? There hasn't been a best one because they're all different. Just like people are different when they get on tier T as far as what they need, and that's genes, it's other things, it's unknown stuff. But one that's really working fucking, you know, phenomenally well for a guy right now who's not had erections for years is 20% DHT daily, an entire dropper, which is, I believe, a milliliter, which is about 200 milligrams of DHT. This is transdermal DHT gel at high potency, 20%, as well as 25 milligrams per vial in a day, and somewhere around 800, 700 IU HCG a week to keep some estrogen in there. Random erections, morning erections, boners have completely returned. This happened in under 3 weeks. Under 3 weeks. Yeah. This is what I mean. I mean, you know, people are wasting their time out there with, like, you know, lithium orotate and fucking being in the toxic circle of the forums who are like, you know, anyone that tries to help, they're like scam artists, and they're all just fucking toxic, especially the PSSD people. Yeah, I've been getting these people better for fucking 7 years, man. Orlando, hey Ryan, estradiol 18.9, DHA 579. Would adding estrogen cream be beneficial? Morning wood not so great. What's your test levels, dude? Yeah, test and DHT are the drivers of that, so long as estrogen's in the good range. Got to know what that is. Jammer is a hyper aromatizer. I've had trouble dialing in on an AI run test Primo 1-to-1. And I've been dialed in for 6 weeks now. Hey, wonderful. There you go. Yeah, see, like, not everyone could get away with that right there, right? Because the Primo lowering the estrogen would be it would, like, destroy some people's libido. Like, some people who, as we saw before, like, can't really deal with AIs. Like, no matter what, it just gives them loss of libido, even if it's, like, low doses. So this is wonderful, brother. And this is a testament to how different people are, dude. Because some people can't do that because their libido goes down the drain because of all that Primo. But you found 200 a test, 200 a Primo, and you're dialed in. Beautiful. I see no problem. Like, look at, you know, make sure your lipids are in order and take action if they aren't after some time. But I see no problem with this. I really see no problem with this, and I think it's a sustainable protocol. There are plenty worse things you could do, not the least of which is drink a lot of alcohol every day, which would be far worse than taking Primobolan to, you know, keep your estrogen in a good place while also making you fucking super anabolic and confident as fuck. Having your ARs bound to at a high level. This is great. Bravo, brother. Bravo. Also, bravo, though. Also. Chris G, how would you fix the issue at the base of the penis from blood flow or prolactin? Well, you're going to need, you'll need test, you know, high test. You'll need in control estrogen. In that case, you'll probably need a little bit of HCG. It would behoove you. My first sergeant in my company used to say that it would behoove you motherfuckers to do this. It would behoove you to also at the same time use probably 10 milligrams a day of strong of tadalafil specifically, or Cialis. Once you know you get past the side effects and you can tolerate it and it's fine. At the same time, you should use a penis pump. I do. I'm 41 years old. I fucking do it. You should do that and pump for 15 minutes a day, maybe twice a day at a medium, you know, gauge, a medium pressure. I also think in cases like this, things like the Phoenix are useful. There's this whole method of improving erectile quality called the Angion method, which basically kind of acts the same way as the Phoenix does. The Phoenix is a shockwave therapy device where it's like this big, like rod-like device. It almost looks like a rocket. And at the end of it is this thing. It's this sort of cylinder-shaped thing that repeatedly does this like a jackhammer, but it's very small so it doesn't hurt. And you lube up your junk and you rub it on certain parts of the junk and it kind of jackhammers your junk. It breaks up fibrosis and increases angiogenesis, the increase in blood vessels. So those would be the ways to resolve that problem. Yeah. At the same time, though, prolactin, we didn't even get into this, right? Because there's too much to talk about regarding prolactin, is a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, boys. Yeah. In case people didn't know that, prolactin inhibits 5-AR. Prolactin inhibits 5-AR. Prolactin stops your DHT. Prolactin inhibits your DHT, boys. It does. And you don't want that. So maybe get some DHT because you might need it in a therapeutic capacity to be therapeutically effective. Therapy with DHT to fix this stuff. Numerology is much more accurate than astrology. Recently, I watched a Facebook clip of a guy who's one of the smartest guys in the world. This guy had 210 IQ. He was asked the question, "Is there a God?" And he said, "Yes, there is a God." And then he went into this really, really complex shit, man. I lost him after about 2 minutes, though. I started thinking about like the sandwich I wanted to eat and stuff, but he was a pretty smart guy. Abel, can Mastron be used as an AI? Sure, absolutely. It does work for some people in that regard, and you could try it. Remember, though, it's doing more than just blocking aromatase or stopping that conversion. It's also blocking receptors. Masteron was used as a anti-breast cancer treatment, like a breast cancer treatment, because it blocks estradiol, the receptors. So different effect there. Brosif. Nosy Blacklight, is the 20% DHT gel homemade or sourced? That's sourced. If homemade, what are the ingredients? So I can ask GPT. The ingredients would be DHT raw powder, DMSO, Delta Mike Sierra Oscar, DMSO, and aloe vera gel. But on top of that, because that's what ChatGPT will suggest, but the way to make it more of a cream-like consistency instead of like a weird gel consistency is to add a little bit of any lotion that you would find. Just, some white, some clear lotion, some good lotion. That's what I do. Or I'll just, what I do is I make the DHT with aloe vera, DHT and DMSO. And it's a gel-like consistency, but it's not perfect. And I'll rub it on my forearms. Literally, my forearms are shaved because of that. You see this? That's shaved. That's because of DHT gel. And then after I rub it on, in order to get it all in there, I'll put it's just some oatmeal like fucking cocoa butter lotion on it, and then that just seals the deal. Then I don't have any DHT particles there because there's a little bit of coarse like DHT particles still there that haven't been absorbed into the DMSO. It's really hard to do that. You need a professional mixer, like one of those cake batters, to really mix it the right way. But ultimately, it's probably going to be better for you to get the gel because these people are doing it in much more of a professional pharmaceutical-like environment. Yeah, and they sell a lot of it. So they have perfected their product. And that's on the source list. So something to think about. Buddy, Seth is going back to the first question of the day. Do you think that at a therapeutic dose of T3, T4 to fix my hypothyroidism could have a catabolic major hindrance to my bulk? I don't think so. No, I'm not aware of any mechanism by which treating hypothyroidism is catabolic. No. Easy with the $20 super chat. Fuck yeah, brother. Thanks, Brosif. Really appreciate that. I'm going to buy me a whole pack of Red Bulls later with that. I'm rich. Thanks, dude. Okay, good morning, brother. Can you share your story on how you started down the biohacking rabbit hole? Yes, sure. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I don't want to fucking bore you guys. I was in the Army from 2005 to late 2008. It was basically 2004, late 2004 to late 2008. I was stationed in Fort Hood, Texas. I was a Cav Scout or a 19 Delta. So it's a combat job. I went to Iraq in October of 2006. And we stayed until late December or January 2008. So 1 year and 3 months. At the time, the Secretary of Defense, his name was Robert Gates, extended every division 3 additional months because we were in the surge of 2007 in Iraq, in Sadr City, one of the worst parts of that fucking country. And that's exactly where I was. Listen, I lost a section sergeant. I was there when it happened. It was just, it was fucked up. Like I saw my dad dead when I was younger, but other than that, I never seen anyone who was dead. But like it happening in a violent manner, it was just fucked. And, like just all of the sites, another person got injured, a lieutenant named Josh Montz. That story ended up being on MSNBC and shit. It's all over the web that day with our platoon. And, that fucked me up. And like, I was fine for the rest of the deployment because I knew I had to be, but then, like hyper fucking alertness kicked in and it just sucked and whatever. When other events happened too, I was blown up by IEDs and walked away fucking fine, thankfully. A sniper round went in between me and, ironically, the guy that ended up dying. His name is Marlon Harper. On a roof, like 3 or 4 months prior, we were on a rooftop meeting with like local government officials, I believe. And a round fucking cracked directly in between us, dude. I mean, that sound is unmistakable. And just a bunch of shit happened when we were over there. So when I got back to the States, like, how do you go from that and then you're a civilian? You're driving around America and like, you know what I mean? Like, it's America, like, So anyway, I wouldn't call it PTSD, but I had anxiety and I also felt like I didn't belong. I was just like, I just felt strange about being back in the States and shit pissed me off, or, entitlement pissed me off, and there was just weird shit happening in my head at that time. So anyway, I started meditating, which really helped. And then I got into herbal compounds. Like one of the first ones was L-theanine to just sort of help me to like be less of a Scrooge. I was a little Scroogey when I got back. I mean, I was like, wasn't nice to people. And that led me to, because L-theanine is effectively nootropic, it led me to nootropics. And then the goal switched from like, let me modify my anxiety to increasing performance, which then led me down the rabbit hole of all the 60 compounds that I like sourced from fucking Russia and China, nootropics. And that got me down that rabbit hole. Now, talking about that on the web is what I started doing in 2015 or so, and then creating our first stack. When you're a subject matter expert on something, which after a few years on neuroscience and nootropics I became, people start coming to you for all kinds of things because they think it's neurologically related or whatever. And so people start coming to me with sexual dysfunction. Because at the time, this is 2018 or something, 2017, people really thought that, these big sexual dysfunction issues were like neurologically mediated. So I had to go down that rabbit hole. First of all, I mean, like full transparency, it was a lucrative opportunity. It was like a lot of people were in that state. I was like, well, that's a good business opportunity. But at the same time, I had to go down the actual research rabbit hole of figuring out it was hormones. It's all hormones, right? And hormones have a direct effect on neurotransmitters anyway. So that's what got me into all of that, HRT or HT plus, TRT, etc. And that's it. That's how it basically worked. It was my problems first, which led me to nootropics, which led me to other things. I think every human, you can't rely on your doctor for shit. It's not some black mystery box of information regarding, your physiology. It seems daunting to want to know as much as they know, but you can. And you should try to know a fraction of what they know about your own body, because it's not up to anybody else. The cavalry isn't coming, and if you want to feel great, it's up to you. So that's really how it worked out, bro. Thanks for asking, man. Appreciate that. Live Pack. Hey, Ryan, have you seen this occur with PFS symptoms? Symptoms improve, and then the person experiences crashes along the way to recovery. Only if they're doing the wrong things. Yep. Yeah, that's called the induction of windows. You're inducing windows of recovery with something. And, maybe they're stroking some hormonal chords at some level, and then it's just reverting back to the way it was because you don't have the right things in place, When you get the right protocol in place for any of these sexual dysfunction issues, you'll continually get better. Yeah, there might be a little bit of rocky territory in the beginning while you're dialing in on those things, like where you have fluctuations and things are better than they're worse. And that's usually due to like estrogen going above range or something in the protocol not being right. But, the whole crash and then get better is due to people doing the wrong things. And all of this is characterized in most cases by trying something, usually a singular compound, with the singular compound, the futile approach of thinking a singular compound will fix the issue. And then it stops working. This is verbatim what you're going to find in the forum. Stops working. Well, of course it does. It's not the solution. It's just temporarily modifying, something, and it's helping you in some way. So when people get the right protocols, no, there's no crashes along the way. There's a little sketchiness as you're trying to dial people in on the right amounts and the right frequency of hormones. But if you're doing the right thing, you shouldn't be crashing. Nosy Blacklight, can you covertly tell me which source on the source list has 20% DHT gel? Covertly? There are two types of males. There are beta males and then there are alpha males. It's about as covert as I could fucking give you. Chris G, if I'm lowering my test and adding Primo at 200 milligrams twice, thanks for asking it in a inconspicuous way though. Or is it conspicuous? Fuck, I hate those two words. If I'm lowering my test and adding Primo at 200 milligrams twice a week, do you think this dose is low enough that I can stay on it periodically, or would you need to cycle off? Primo at 200 milligrams twice a week. The determinant of that is like where your LDL and HDL and ApoB go. Your apolipoprotein B. So if ApoB goes high, I mean that's more of an accurate marker of a predictor of heart disease in the future or cardiovascular problems. So you don't want that high. LDL, HDL, HDL these days in the literature seems a little less consequential. You still do not want it low. You want it as high as it can be. And LDL, you don't want super high either. You want to keep those things in range. So as long as those things are in range, you should be good. Yeah, as long as those things are in range. Primobolan, it's a treatment for a lot of other things. And, people are also really apprehensive to if they need to like pretty consistently be on Anavar. And while, it can be not great for your liver if taken in high doses too consistently, I kind of think Anavar is also pretty sustainable, but you must monitor your blood work. The moment, as Vigorous Steve says, the moment your blood work gets unmanageable, you have to dial back. Said, you are welcome, brother. Josh Walker, with clients of yours you've helped recover from PFS, do they normally recover 100% and in what time? Sometimes 4 weeks. That's the soonest, honestly. Like a guy that came on board about a month ago, I request status updates every other day or every third day so that I can stay in the loop of the protocol and think about, like at nighttime or in the morning when I actually think about these people and their protocols, like the progress and what we might need to do next and all this sort of stuff. And this guy is having randoms and popping erections in 3 weeks, And so, that's a little more rare. It just turns out that DHT itself, Proviron with some HGD is the right protocol for him. It's the right protocol for him, man. Zachary, would you rather control E2 by adding in Primobolan or by using an AI? I'd rather add Primo. I think Vigorous Steve and other professionals in this sector would agree. I'd rather add Primobolan. Yeah. I'd rather use a DHT derivative, man. That's just the bottom line. I think we do know whether or not it's like, yeah, sure. The deleterious outcomes of the use of AIs, like lumbar, spine, and hip bone mineral density reduction, those are in 7 milligrams a week of fucking Arimidex with postmenopausal women. So it's very different and non-extrapolable to us men who have high bone mineral density because we're using androgens and we're men. But you still don't want to fucking run the risk of those problems. So, AIs, when used too much long term, probably have long term negative consequences. So if you can get away, if you can use Primo or something else, it's probably going to be bad. Good morning, Ryan. HDL 60, that's good. LDL 103, not bad. You're 4 points over the range.
If I were you, I would go on Amazon and find the Krupsund, KRUPPSSUND, something to this effect. It's like a German name. Brand of tocotrienols, TOCOTRIENOLS, tocotrienols. And I would take 2 to 4 capsules of those tocotrienols every day. Yep. Tocotrienols will modify your lipids favorably, and it happens via the same action as statins. They're not going to cause problems like statins cause. That's what I would do if I were you. Farmer Rick with the $5 super chat. I don't feel as good as I did on just higher test E. Will this take time to adjust? So tired after 2 p.m. Never happened since before tea. I think you got to give me context, man. You know, I think I remember you've got 40 milligrams of prop. If it's not making you feel good on top of your test E, you have to drop it. You know, anytime you make an adjustment on a protocol and after 3-4 weeks you consistently don't feel good, it's the wrong protocol. Yeah, but next time, bro, you know, just super chat like $40 and $50, so it gives you the whole bit to explain the whole context. All right, brother. Preston, how to enhance the body's response to tests long term? I feel so much better at higher doses. Join the club. But I know I can't stay there forever, Proviron or any other compounds. Yeah, Proviron might be useful in this case, you know, to sensitize your response to androgens via optimizing the ARs. But listen, you can feel good at lower doses of test too. You know, you can. It's just you might need to... Yeah, you know, you might need to bring some other stuff into your regimen that, like, you know, makes you feel some of that same energy. Whether it's P5P for more dopamine, or whether it's like maybe some nootropics, potentially low dose modafinil every other day. You know, other elements of physiology. Like, one thing I notice is that if I take a gram of sodium chloride, it's a salt tablet, and chew it up at the first thing in the morning, I actually feel better the whole fucking morning versus when I don't. So it's not necessarily exclusively about this stuff. But if you think about high dose testosterone, what are you doing? You're creating more water and salt retention. So yeah, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel fucking better. You know? So look for other things if you need to go down to higher doses. But listen, there are plenty of people running 300 to 500 milligrams a week pretty consistently. You know, bodybuilders who have been doing this for years and who are big and whatever, but get echocardiograms and their bloods look fine. They're running 2 grams or 3 grams or more. And they'll look at 300 and 500 a week and go, yeah, you can do that forever. You can do that forever. That's their perspective. Now, is this going to come with H&H problems? Probably, eventually. But you could give blood for that, and you could take Naringen for that. Is this going to raise your blood pressure unfavorably at some point? Maybe. Maybe not. It didn't for me. At 500, my blood pressure was great. So you've got to look out for that. It really all comes down to, can you manage the blood and your health on higher doses of androgens? And if you can do that, you can take them. That's really what I think at this point. You know, are you taking a little bit of a gamble for some unknowns potentially, but do an echocardiogram every now and then, 6 months, a year. So, that you can look at whether or not, you have mitral valve issues or, ventricular problems, which almost definitely you won't. Almost definitely you will not. A Red Bull break. God, I got to the end of the can there and just got really sad. Real sad, dude. But so, that's my take on that, bro. Hope that helps. Good kid versus Satan. All right, bro. All right. I'm ready to start TRT. What are the side effects I should expect? All manner of shit, brother. No, I'm just joking. Well, I mean, right away, you start TRT, your body's not used to the influx of hormones. DHT and estradiol might get some overstimulation, might have some sleeplessness, you might have some nipple sensitivity, might have some anxiety. All that passes. Every single one of those symptoms pass. So just stick with it. That's about it. If you're one of those very unlucky individuals, you might see some hair loss. Most people don't on just TRT. Most people don't see hair loss. Other than that, you might wake up with morning wood again. Your erections will be stellar throughout the day. You'll, be able to go for sex like for 40 fucking minutes and maintain an erection. A lot of benefits. That's what I would think about if I were you. and work through the sides the best you can and do as much research as possible. Stay on this channel. Go to the testosterone subreddit, but make sure you understand, bro. Some of it's anecdotal and some of it's bullshit. Some of it's bad advice. Don't forget that. Go from there. Steve, I noticed since adding cream, I've really been leaning out. 2 clicks and 10 milligrams of prop daily. PM dose not needed. Do notice more testes shrink on the cream, though? Yeah, it does that. It does that. Yeah, I need a little more HCG with that stuff. Yeah, you're gonna lean out. Yeah, I mean, DHT itself, which you'll get more with cream, is so good for your physique. It's just phenomenal. When I use DHT gel, like my body kind of fucking it's not crazy, but my body transforms in 3 days. Like I just look leaner and more round. My shoulders look more round. I look more vascular. It's kind of crazy. DHT is like that. You go on Proviron, a good dose consistently, your physique's gonna fucking change. Yeah. Travis, Ryan, have you ever heard of an increase in snoring and possible sleep apnea while on TRT? Hitting the gym, not heavy, in good shape, but I'm experiencing this mildly. If anything, listen, the bottom line with sleep apnea, I think, is that it's a problem that resides in your digestion. Yeah. It's a problem that resides in your digestion because gastric contents, not necessarily acid, but sometimes people have silent reflux where you don't get acid reflux, but gastric contents like pepsin, the digestive enzyme, shoot into your larynx. And you know what that does? It causes inflammation in your larynx area. And then when you're laying down like that, it closes because of the inflammatory response. It closes more so, and you can't breathe well. And you wake up with problems. So you might want to look at your digestion, Other than that, I'm sure there probably is some degree of mechanism here, not the least of which is your voice box in your voice changes on TRT. It gets deeper, largely because of DHT. And you'll prove that it's DHT if you just take Proviron for a long time or if you take DHT. Literally, acutely, while you're taking DHT, your fucking voice is deeper. Yeah, well, the reason it does that is because I forget the exact mechanism of this. Vigorous Steve would know, but it changes your, the architecture of your voice box and your throat and stuff. So that could be one of the mechanisms by which this is happening, brother. Any recommendations for joint pain instead of Nandrolone? Not really. Higher estrogen. Honestly, higher estrogen. I mean, if you're taking an AI, that shit will cause that problem. If you're not, if the dose isn't right for you, for sure, that'll cause that problem. Square, sleeping problems after adding HCG. Pregnal, super expensive Pregnal. Don't ever buy Pregnal again, brother. Just go to Source List and get it for way cheaper. Pregnal's a robbery. It only lasts 3 to 4 weeks. All right, so you added Pregnal to your TRT, 400 IU 3 times a week. Okay. Reduced it to 800 a week total, still the same. Cause of this is almost definitely estradiol. That's just it. Yeah, listen, independent of HCG stimulating the Leydig cells to make more test, and thus you convert more to estradiol, HCG also stimulates Leydig cell aromatization. You're just going to tell the Leydig cells to make more estrogen independent of testosterone. The mechanism is independent of testosterone. So there's 2 mechanisms by which HCG increases estradiol. It's more test, and it's also a separate mechanism which makes your fucking testes make more estrogen. So that's almost definitely the problem here. There's just no other problem. There's no other issue with this. I've looked into the literature on HCG, and HCG and LH have very distinct differences in terms of what they do, actually. Me and Dave Lee went over this. But in the end, most of the side effects just come from estrogen. Yep. Any other tips for keeping the gonads robust other than HCG while on cream? Yeah, recombinant FSH. Yeah, you might have to just go the recombinant FSH route and take that. Yep. That would be my suggestion. If you don't want to take HCG, just you'll have to take that. Yeah, Proviron can do this for some people too, but it's hit or miss. It's not for everybody. Like, it just doesn't make a difference in some, and some people it acts fine. Exogenous DHT as well, but also that's hit or miss. So I would try recombinant FSH if I were you. And if that doesn't work, you got to find the HCG dose that works. You got to find that. Half-life of methanolone enanthate. Enanthate is 4 to 6 days, I believe, with primo enanthate. Yep. Yeah. Does DHT gel have any permanent effects after stopping? It's hard for me to determine that. If anything, some of the hair growth that you'll get at random parts of your body is probably permanent. I don't see that going away. You might have permanent voice deepening. If you're using DHT a lot, you probably have permanent voice deepening, because I don't see those things reverting, after you've taken enough DHT or your DHT is high enough from test. So voice deepening, so much of it is unstudied, so we don't actually know like if there are permanent changes in neurology. Probably there are, right? DHT does so many permanent things. Like when you're a baby, DHT, the conversion of your mother's HCG into test, then into DHT via 5-alpha reductase prevents progesterone from making you a woman. That's permanent. So, there are a lot of things that that DHT does that are permanent. So probably voice deepening, masculinity. Before I got on TRT, I ran labs on DHT, and my DHT itself was always pretty high. So I was always like just assertive and shit in life. But my voice wasn't as deep as after I got on TRT. So I don't know if like actual exogenous androgens like just have a more effect on that. But yeah, you'll probably have all those effects, all those effects. But relative to sexual function and stuff, if you have down to sexual function, you're probably going to be on DHT for a while. Preston, been taking your advice and adding 2 to 3 running sessions per week. Finally feeling way better so far. It just does that. Every time I run, even if I'm in like a calorie deficit or if I'm in some sort of fucked up place or whatever, like running just makes me feel better. My brain works better. I'm happier. My brain works quicker. I can deal with like anxiety about business shit like easier, or whatever comes up. Like I just deal with it a lot easier. Running is phenomenal, dude. It's phenomenal, man. Phenomenal, bro. But so is like somewhat high intensity cardio. If you go out and walk for 3 miles and you're walking pretty fast, you're going to get a lot of those benefits as well. But you don't work the cardiovascular system and thus the brain, like, and the neurotrophic factors that come with cardio without running. Go walk 3 miles and then run 2 miles and see how different you feel between the two of them. It's vastly different. Hector, I don't know if it's because of HCG, but finally increased my SHBG from 12 to 19. Maybe it is because you've got some extra estradiol there. Maybe there's a mechanism by which HCG itself can increase fucking SHBG. I don't know. I'm in email communication with a guy who follows this channel who his name is Parabolic is his like handle, who has been talking a lot about increasing SHBG, like a protocol to do that. So I'll have him on the channel at some point. I just got to dial that in. And we'll talk about strategies to increase SHBG from his perspective. Yeah. Yes, Sourceless has got options for this. Yep. Voice is definitely deeper compared to my old vids. Yeah, dude. If I were to count the things that are different, this is why like I'm so fucking gung-ho about TRT. Like in my body and myself after, starting the use of androgens, even while having like good in range testosterone levels prior, I don't think I'd run out of fucking fingers, dude. So much that's different. There's so much that's different, dude. So much, It's life-changing. It's life-changing. Like if in the States here, man, how many people's depression would be fucking cured if they had access to testosterone. If their doc was willing to give it to them instead of looking at their labs and being like, well, you're at 450, you're fine. Must be something else. Want some Lexapro to destroy your life eventually? Want some? It's cheap, make you feel better temporarily. It's like, yeah, dude, don't be dumb enough to grab the low-hanging fruit. Get on test. But so many people in these situations would fucking dramatically change their lives if they just went on testosterone. Yep. I'm talking about full-blown depression, anxiety, the inability to date, Like I talked about yesterday or recently on content, man. It's like, yeah, on the NoFap video, it's like the difference between your assertiveness and pursuing women today and like doing all the planning and shit like that and just getting them out on dates in a low test state versus a high test state is phenomenal. I mean, it's crazy how different it is, you know? It's crazy. Yeah. If you're low testosterone, good luck. Good luck with women. They fucking smell it. They smell it. Chris G, I love the way I feel, and I'm starting to look on Primo. Yeah, you know, those Primo fucking physique gains are something else. It seems to be less of an issue on my hair than Proviron. Is this normal? Not necessarily. People have varying responses to DHT derivatives relative to hair loss, you know? Yeah. If like it's just treating you better, you found something that works well, don't touch it. Stick with it, man. It's great. It's great. You found something that works well, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Everybody's going to have to figure that out, you know? What works better? You know, is Proviron nuking your hair? It nukes mine. Starts nuking my shit, bro. Starts nuking my shit, dude. And then you know what I start fucking thinking I'm going to look like? Dan Aykroyd from Conehead. And I don't want to look like that, you know? I love Proviron. I love the way that it makes me feel. And I like high potency DHT gel as well. But with Proviron especially, man, it just starts to work on my hair in a very negative way. But if Primo is not doing this, wonderful. Wonderful. You found something that works. Don't change it. You know, so long as everything else is going well. All right, boys, questions getting a little scant. I'm going to end the stream. 20% off everything for just a couple more days. Listen, April is our busiest month in everything, not just sales, but also coaching. So if you people are thinking about getting on board with me on a 3-month or a 6-month package, you have to do it now. It's also 20% off. The code is down in the description of this video. Everything else is 20% off. Use that code, including source list. Those are big discounts because in April, they're going to go away because we're going to get, I mean, frankly, we're just going to get the sales anyway because April's our biggest month of the year. So those discounts are going away, you know, or they'll stay for the first couple of weeks, but then they're eventually going to go away. Other than that, content coming this week, Monday or Wednesday. Look forward to that. So much more to talk about. I appreciate your guys' questions so fucking much, man. I appreciate the fact that on Saturday morning, you're here with me, you know, trying to learn and getting in this conversation. Hope you guys also have a great fucking weekend. You're welcome for the stream. Thanks for being here. Without you guys, this channel doesn't exist, dude. Doesn't exist. That's it. That's it. All it is me with my knowledge and shit, dude. You know, without you guys, you know, we as a company have nothing. We have nothing without you guys, the audience, customers, clients, viewers. You know, you guys are all effectively in some way Cortex Labs, and I really fucking appreciate you. All right. Rock on, kick ass. Bye-bye. 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 My goat. You're welcome, my goat.